take steroids though for those 2 weeks. Those doggies. Yeah, she's
Okay, I'll call the public hearing to order at 7:01. All right, thank you everybody for coming. I don't think there's anybody on Zoom.
I can tell.
We're missing Chris today, our technological.
Chris, yes, she's on vacation, but
Oh, man.
she did call me today, but we're all set. So this is a public hearing for us to present proposed charter changes that we have developed over the course of our tenure as a Charter Revision Commission. So this is, I have a few, I might have.
I have
Oh, okay. I have 2 extra copies if anybody wants them.
Is this attached to the agenda?
It was, yes. It was posted with the agenda, so you're good. Okay. So there were a number of things that we were asked to look at, and we did look at. So the 3 primary things that we were charged with as part of our formation was considering changing the town clerk, the tax collector, and the treasurer from elected positions to appointed positions. We did look at all those, with a lot of, a fair amount of investigation. And the conclusion we came to was that we agreed that the treasurer should be made an appointed position. But we decided as a group that the tax collector and the town clerk should remain elected positions. So, we did spend some time looking at the potential changes to the language related to the formation of the Permanent Building Commission, but it was determined that was unnecessary, given an ordinance that exists related to the town, or to that particular commission. So, I'll go through the changes that we have proposed. They're actually relatively limited, given that the only thing that we are recommending be changed is the treasurer be made an appointed position. So in section 302 subsection D, that's where the treasurer is mentioned as an elected office, and so we've added language there to make it clear that the elected treasurer position will serve out the term that the treasurer has been elected to, which is November of 2027, and beginning after that election, it will no longer be an elected official. And then we make reference to chapter, I believe is it chapter 6?
6.
Yeah, 6.
So I do think we need to change that.
Yeah, I think when we have the meeting, I think we can make those,
Okay.
those changes. So in chapter 6, we've added a new section related to the town treasurer. So it talks about how the treasurer shall be appointed, which will be a majority of the Board of Selectmen shall appoint a treasurer. And we make reference to the general statutes, which is where the powers and duties of the treasurer are delineated. And we also indicated that the treasurer shall be appointed to a maximum term of 4 years, which can be renewed, and making it clear that it's an employee subject to all personnel policies of the town. And we did make a provision that if the treasurer position is vacant, the director of finance may serve in an interim capacity for no more than 30 days if that's the case. With the exception, and that's an exception because we also added a provision that the town treasurer and the director of finance shall not hold this, the same person shall not hold both positions simultaneously, with the exception of a temporary vacancy, as I just mentioned. So I believe that is all the changes that we are proposing to the charter. And so this language was published as part of the meeting notice. So before I open it up, is there anything anybody on the commission would like to mention regarding the changes? I would just say, if you do speak, please turn on the mic, because when I was listening to the recording last time, trying to make sure we had the changes correct, it's very hard to hear if you're not on the microphone.
This is Elizabeth Kaplan. I'd just add that the town attorney reviewed all this language, or provided the language once we denoted what we were intending to do. So
Good point, thank you.
this did not come out of thin air.
Right, okay. Anybody else? Okay. So with that, I will open it up to public comment. As I said, if you do have any comment you'd like to make, please use the microphone. But anybody? Oh, Tom?
I'll do it.
Okay.
There's a large crowd, so.
I'll use my booming voice. Tom Frenet, 489 Warnertown Road. Thanks for the public hearing and inviting comments, which you have to do anyhow. Two things. I thought that the material attached to the agenda looked to me like some of the comments on there were comments from the town attorney to you that needed to be answered by you. Like a couple, DD1 was one of the things in there, and I assume DD was Derek Donnelly. So I'm kind of surprised to see that you didn't present something that had those answers in it. So you still have some work to do to finalize the detail. I think you mentioned that. So anyhow, just to comment on what you're presenting. The comment you made about the change, if it goes through, would have the town treasurer follow all personnel policies. That's an interesting comment. I don't know what that means to somebody who's currently elected and becomes a, and would change to be subject to quote all policies. What policies are they not subject to now? I guess is the question that came to mind. And how would that change for somebody that moves from one to the other? And I don't know the answer, I don't know that you do, but just something to think about. You might have to explain it somewhere along the line. And the 30-day time period for a temporary coverage by the Director of Finance if the Treasurer's position is vacant. Doesn't sound like it's long enough to actually get a replacement. The hiring process doesn't usually happen in 30 days. I mean, no matter what. Maybe it could, but I think that would be unusual. And I understand that that's the only exception you have in there for a temporary fill. But 30 days seems a stretch, I'll put it that way. A couple other comments. At a previous meeting, I mentioned that in one of your earliest meetings, you spoke about it being useful to ask the auditors about what they thought in the situation a town had a hired treasurer compared to an elected one. I don't know that you ever got an answer to that. I know I reminded you once that you'd said you would do that, and I don't think that's happened, at least you haven't spoken about it. So I think that would be still a useful process to go through just to make sure that we're fully informed as a town about what that might entail. I go back to a couple of comments that I've made and other people have made is, during the review you've had, that it's still not clear to me, and from the comments the first selectman has made, what the real problem is. And so from that, my conclusion is there's not enough of a problem to make a change. There's a definite plus in my mind if any of those positions are elected, that they're gonna be town residents. You know, if it's an unelected person, it could be somebody hired from anywhere. And I think one of the first letters you got submitted in your very first meeting was from somebody who had some experience in Massachusetts where they made a change and it didn't go very successfully because they ended up with an employee or had employees that were not as dedicated to the town, I guess is the bottom line to what was said. So I think that's still an issue, and I think that at this point it's still important for the town to continue with an elected, all the positions being elected. And the other thing is that you're talking only about the treasurer now, but also I think it's important that those positions not be, I'll call it, controlled by other boards or commissions. They have a good bit of independence, which some people may see as bad and some may not, but it provides a very independent office that they, you know, both the office and the intent of the office is to be independent of any of the politics or whatever, and just serve the people. They're elected by the people, they answer to the people. And I think that's important, and something to really think about. And I think that'll make it more difficult to get this both past the Board of Selectmen, but also past a town meeting, a referendum, whatever is required. I'm not sure which is required, maybe you can tell me. Is a town meeting enough to pass this, to change the charter, or it has to be a referendum? Okay, and a referendum outside of a presidential year means you have to have, what, 15% turnout or something like that in order to pass. So I just think it's definitely a tougher road. So those are my comments. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I think the time for us to respond to any of the comments would be during the meeting when we review the hearing, so.
Okay.
So we're not ignoring you, but
Yeah,
we'll.
that's fine.
Yeah, okay,
Well, sir.
all right.
I've been ignored before.
Is there,
Is there somebody online?
Says Suffield resident.
we'll do the room before we go online.
It's coming apart, sorry. What, go ahead. Is it working?
Good evening, Neil Hornish, Thorell Avenue. I'd like to start by thanking the members of the Charter Revision Committee for your work in this year's efforts. I think you were given an unreasonably short time to review this important document, which prevented a full review of the charter, but I think you did a good job with the time you were given. The proposed change to the charter, as you mentioned, is limited to making the town treasurer an appointed rather than elected position beginning in November of 2027, when the current treasurer's elected term ends. During the discussions whether to make this appointed or elected, I thought there were very reasonable arguments on both sides of the issue. I'd like to use this time at the public hearing to recommend that the position of the town treasurer remain an elected position. The proposed revision adds paragraph 610, which states, in part, a majority of the Board of Selectmen shall appoint the town treasurer, who shall be chosen exclusively on the basis of professional qualifications, character, and administrative experience. My concern with making the treasurer position appointed lies with the Board of Selectmen. I know selectmen come and go, and by 2027, we may have different select persons serving, we don't know. However, I think the current Board of Selectmen have demonstrated unequivocally that they do not appoint the person most qualified for a position. They hold other qualities more important than qualification and experience. I think with our current Board of Selectmen, character would be defined as political party affiliation. They've shown that the political party weighs more than experience and qualifications, and I fear making the treasurer an appointed position may lead to party loyalty requirements or even cronyism or nepotism. And I understand that an elected position may be determined based on which political party that candidate belongs to, but I would rather put my faith and trust in the citizens of the town. I don't think the Board of Selectmen should have any additional authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? Okay. All right, is there anybody on Zoom that would like to make a comment? If we see somebody on Zoom and you're muted, so if you do want to make a comment, please let us know. Okay,
Can I add one thing?
sure.
Tom Frenay, Warnertown Road. I just had one other comment. Mr. Hornish reminded me that one of the 3 criteria that you listed in there was administrative experience. I don't think that was the word that was used, but administrative something or other. The town treasurer doesn't do much administrative work. I mean, they watch the money, they invest the money, they do documentation of how that process works. But administrative experience is really not a very big piece of what the town treasurer does. So that may be something you want to think again about, whether that's the appropriate description for qualifications. Thank you.
All right, given there's no other comment, somebody willing to make a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so for the recording, I'll note that we adjourned the public hearing at 7:19. And now I'll call the special meeting to order at 7:19. All right, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. So we have 3 meetings for which we have not approved the minutes. So I believe those were distributed to everybody in advance of the meeting.
Yeah.
So is there a motion either to approve those individually or to approve them all together?
I'll make a motion to approve all the minutes together as a single.
Okay, is there a
Just a-
second?
Friendly amendment, Kathy.
Kathy always has a
I
friendly
don't,
amendment.
no, I don't, no, always. Kathy Harrington, I just have a friendly amendment for the October 1st meeting minutes that are on page 1, the last paragraph in line 8.
Okay, before we do that, can we get a second for the motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth.
That we delete the language that states participating via Zoom, because Kevin Goff, who was the chair of PBC, was actually here in person,
Okay,
so that's it.
so that's the October 1st minutes?
Correct.
Okay. Anybody have any other changes? Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that's unanimous. Okay, so review and discuss comments from the public hearing. So just a couple things that I would say. And Tom brought up that we did say that we would talk to the auditors, and that's an oversight on my part, that I did not talk to the auditors about that. They are actually in this week, so I can have a conversation and certainly relay that to the Board of Selectmen for the meeting next week. So I apologize, but yeah, that was an oversight on my part. You know, and I understand the, not wanting to make a change now. But the way I look at it, if the current treasurer could stay on forever, I think we'd be perfectly fine. I mean, in my book, I wouldn't be changing anything. But, this is a long, focused effort, and we know that the current treasurer is not gonna be there forever. So I think that was the deciding factor for me, was to just, to looking at it to say, that we're well served now, very well served, with the person that's in that role in an elected position, but, that person will not be there forever, and, this is a long process to change the charter. So I think that was the tipping point for me, when I looked at it, was to say that, now's the time to make the change, because, that person won't be there forever. I think, my recommendation to the Board of Selectmen would be that, when this does become an appointed position, that I would encourage the Board of Selectmen to appoint the incumbent for as long as she's willing to serve. But, and that's what I would say about those comments. And, I think there was a comment made about political patronage, and those are my words, not the words that were used. And I think, with any town position, that's always, it's always a risk. But I think we have that with every role. So, while it's a concern, I think it's, I don't know that it's enough of a concern to not make this change in my book. So, I don't know. Mike, do you have any comments on the public hearing?
No.
No? Okay. Jeremy?
No, just thank you all for your input. Definitely agree and echo with some of the sentiments that were expressed, so it is appreciated. At the same time, this does need to go to the town to be voted on and accepted. The comment was made in terms of the current administration and questions about that. So again, the voters do have the option to vote the selectmen or select persons as they see fit if they're not fulfilling their roles. So that is another option. In some ways, it does feel right in terms of looking forward as we move toward maybe a more town manager position. This is at least a step in that direction. So I think it's worth at least proposing the question and letting folks decide.
Sure. I would agree with Eric on his tipping point of what made me decide that now might be the time for moving the town treasurer to an appointed position, was basically we have that sweet spot. All three of these positions are held by fantastic people, but there's no guarantee that those fantastic people will remain, or the next fantastic people put on the election ballot for us will be fantastic. So, putting something in the charter that protects the finances of this town specifically seemed like the right move. And then the research we did looking at the towns in the state of Connecticut, more and more moving to appointed in the treasurer role compared to the other roles. So, Tom is shaking his head at me.
Kathy?
Thank you, Eric. This is Kathy Harrington. So I would just echo many of the comments that were already made. I would point out that the Director of Finance is appointed by a majority of the combined membership of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, and there's never been any question of partisanship or inappropriate conduct or, you know, appointing of that position. I don't really think that it's proper to just assume that the Board of Selectmen will be making improper appointments for the town treasurer if this is approved by the residents. I agree with Eric. I've already said on the record here that I don't think any of us were looking for any of these three positions, that we were looking at for people to lose their jobs per se. I say jobs because they're really elected. And if this were to be approved by the residents, I personally would also recommend to my fellow Board of Selectmen members that the incumbent, if she was still in the position, be appointed for as long as she was willing to serve again. I was the one that made a motion that we increase her salary. I heard tremendously great things about her across the board from everybody who's worked with her. I have no reason to say that Casey Colson should not continue to be our town treasurer, even if it's an appointed position. So I think that goes directly against the comments that were made by Mr. Hornish about political affiliation and cronyism and nepotism. I think that's all just mischaracterization and assumption with no basis in fact. So the second point about the language that's drafted for the town treasurer saying it will be chosen exclusively on the basis of professional qualification, character, and administrative experience. That was drafted by the town attorney, and I noticed that it's the exact same language that we have for the finance director. It says also the finance director who shall be chosen exclusively on the basis of professional qualifications, character, and administrative experience, and I think we've had a wonderful experience on our series of finance directors, one of which was Mr. Remington here for a period of time. I think administrative experience, it can be a very broad. It's not saying that it's their administrative assistant. I mean, Casey Colson, she has to do all of the bank transactions. She has to do the computer work, all of that. That's administrative. It can even be to that level. My only other comments were just that I think my notes had reflected that we thought that the language about the town treasurer and the director of finance not being the same individual should be its own section, 612 as opposed to subsection D. It's a small matter, but to pull it outside so that it comes after, so it would be in its own section. And then just making the correction so that the reference in section 302D actually references chapter 6 instead of chapter 4. But I think this group has done an amazing job, and I'm very much looking forward to Eric making a presentation to the Board of Selectmen next week so I can praise them again, and really say that I think that each of these members, I hope, step up and volunteer for other positions on our town boards and commissions as they're available, because I think they've all done a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no other comments on the public hearing, we can move on to considering changes to the draft language. So I know there were, as I was reflecting back to the discussion from the last meeting to actually draft, make sure we had the proper changes, I think there was some concern, rightly so, that maybe I missed or misunderstood where some of those changes were supposed to go. So I guess I'd open it up to changes, whether because of something we heard from the public hearing or if there are things that we want to correct. I think now would be the time to make those changes to the draft.
So I think we mentioned through email that, where am I? Section 302D, our first edit. It should be C chapter 6, not 4,
Yep. Okay.
and probably in parentheses
Yeah.
after the sentence.
Okay.
And then
Did you have that as a separate section?
I had it written in my notes both ways.
Okay.
It didn't confirm which, so I was like, whatever. But I wrote it both ways because we
Okay.
originally took one.
Yeah.
And then in section 610B, at least the piece I'm still looking at has a typo. It should be a maximum of 4 years, and it says 4.2.
Yep.
So
Okay.
just to
It
adjust
has a little
that.
strikeout. It's tough to see. It has a little strikeout.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, not in this one.
Oh.
I think when I sent it to the town clerk for posting, I sent it in Word. I should have sent it in PDF because I think some of the,
They reverted. I saw you change them, and then they've
Yeah.
changed back, so.
yeah, so.
In section C, where we talk about the 30 days, I do value Tom's opinion there, that 30 days is a very quick turnaround. If the thought process is we have a sudden vacancy, if we're going to post a position, hire a position, expect somebody to leave a position and then enter this one, 30 days is a tight turnaround. I
Right,
don't know how
but-
necessarily to amend that. I'm assuming our Director of Finance has similar language, and that's why Derek
Well, but it
suggested it.
does say it may be extended
Exactly.
by a majority vote of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay,
Thank you for bringing that up, I meant to comment on
Yeah.
that. So it can be extended, and so I would think that if, as Beth indicated, if it was kind of like a sudden departure, and we needed more than the 30 days, then maybe right at the jump, we could potentially, extend it. And if it was something more that we got, maybe if the town treasurer knew they were going to be leaving and gave like 2 months' notice and we could get it started,
Yep.
maybe the 30 days would be sufficient, would be on a case-by-case basis. So thanks for,
Yep.
forgot that
Yeah,
point.
it's Mike Haynes. I think the intention here is that not to allow the same person to hold both roles
Mhm.
for more than 30 days, right? So the
clearly
assistant,
it's more work than one person could
yeah, the
legitimately
assistant
do for,
finance director could assume that role, as an example.
Oh, true.
So it's
Could help
not
out.
just, finding time to hire outside.
So I think there was a comment that what we have is 610D. So D is the part that says the treasurer and the director of finance shall not be the same person. Was there a comment that that should be in a different place?
we had discussed it both ways, and Kathy mentioned that her notes ended it as it being its own section 612.
Okay.
So we talk about the treasurer in 610, we talk about the director of finance in 611, and then we make this statement in 612, which references both of them, both positions.
I do think
So
it
that
could
does
be
make
either
sense,
way.
yeah, it makes sense, but I think if we want to keep it where it is as 610D, then we also need to add to the director of finance a 611D that says the same thing. So if we just make it a 612, we only have to say it once. If we're saying those people can't be the same, if we're saying it for treasurer, we should be saying it for director of finance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems contradictory to, C and D seem to be contradictory. And especially when you have shall in there, as opposed to should, as an example. And I'd almost put that as the first sentence in C.
This
I
is-
like that.
And, change shall to should perhaps. Or-
Which shall, I'm sorry,
Or-
this is Kathy Harrington.
So in D,
Mhm.
right after it says Director of Finance shall
Mhm.
not be, to me, shall means won't,
Mhm.
right?
I guess I look at it, Mike, this is Kathy Harrington's, that C says that the director of finance shall serve in that capacity, not necessarily hold that office. See, I guess I see it as being different. Holding an office is like you have been
Oh, I see what you're
appointed
saying.
versus serving in that capacity would be, and again, that
Temporary.
subsection C was language drafted by the town attorney. We drafted D, and
Yep.
so I just think they're a little different.
But Kathy, I think in C, doesn't it say the office
So serving,
of the town treasurer?
in the event of a temporary vacancy in the office,
Maybe it should say position of town treasurer.
Well, but, I mean, to put it in context,
Piece of
C was
office.
drafted without like, the town attorney was not thinking that they were not gonna be the same person.
Mhm.
that's
So it
true.
was drafted, just to say if there's a vacancy, the director of finance serves in that capacity. We then added D that said they can't be the same person, so there is a bit of contradiction there.
Do we need to go back to Derek and ask him his thoughts on
I'm just wondering if we
where
could
that should
start
sit?
either subsection D or a different section saying, an exception, except as, subsection C could say, except as provided in D, they shall, you know what I'm saying? Because then D would be like an exception to C.
Well, what if D in some form got moved up to the end of B? So when we're talking about the four-year appointment,
Okay,
it can't be, the treasurer and the director of finance can't be the same person. But then it says on a temporary basis, the director of finance can serve in that capacity.
Yeah, and I like doing that, and to Kathy's point, I'd actually put in the parens after that, with exception to see below or something to that effect. So that way it's clear that the intention is not to have the same person, but, in this interim period, it could be the same person for a short stint.
so, this is Kathy Harrington, my suggestion would be if you wanted to move that language that's in D currently up to B, is to do like introductory language that would say, except as provided for in subsection C, the offices of this and that.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a reference
Okay,
between those
I think
two
that's smart.
concepts.
Yeah. And so, Eric, you're suggesting that that language go at the end of B?
Well, now that I look at it, yeah.
Okay, I think that's good. So, except as provided for in subsection C, the offices of town treasurer and director of finance should not be held by the same individual simultaneously. We still want to do the word should. You like that better? Okay. Yeah,
So it's should, not shall.
that's what,
Yeah, okay.
and then it's not an exception.
Okay. I think
Is
that
there any
works.
reason why we need to say anything similar under 611 for director of finance? Like the director of finance shouldn't not
I don't
also be
think
the
so.
treasurer, or no?
No, I don't think,
It can exist in one place.
I think it can exist in
Okay.
one place.
Okay. Any other changes?
No?
So do we need a motion to approve those changes, do we think?
Might as well.
I'll make a motion that we accept the changes that we just noted to section 610.
And also
Okay.
302.
We made a small change in 302.
And 302.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. All right, so we're scheduled to present to the Board of Selectmen next week. I mean, we have a presentation that we used, an interim presentation that we did a couple of months ago. I mean, my vision is that we would just modify that presentation and present the final recommendations as part of that. I mean, does anybody have other thoughts as to how that should be handled? No?
Sounds like a perfect segue.
Okay. I mean, I think it would be, great if everybody could be there. It just, shows that we're in unanimity with these changes, so. And I think it would also be a good way for everybody's efforts to be recognized. Certainly, I appreciate, everybody's efforts on the commission. I think everybody took the job seriously. And, everybody was very dedicated to, finding time that we could meet. Everybody's got busy schedules, and, I think everybody did a good job of making the meetings and providing input, so, I mean, as the chairman, that was certainly appreciated, so. Anything else anybody has?
Motion to adjourn? Oh,
Just the last thing,
before,
yeah, just, I
That's
mean,
for Mike.
the last thing I would say is just, that we did have a lot of public participation in the meetings, and, that's certainly appreciated. We did listen. I would say, our job was to take all input, analyze that, and make decisions. So I know that, there was input that we received that, maybe did not make it into a charter change, but, that doesn't mean that we didn't consider or value the input that we received, so, so we appreciate everybody's participation that did participate, and the civil nature of the discussion. I think, you know, it was I think we had a good dialogue with everybody that was involved, so that's certainly appreciated. So, all right, now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I believe you have something else on the agenda before you adjourn,
What's that?
public input.
There's not
We
an
didn't-
item on there.
Because we had the
You
public
say you
hearing.
do it for every meeting?
Well, but we
We had a
didn't,
public hearing.
because I had the public hearing, I left it off the agenda.
Just
How about
saying.
if we adjourn and
It's a
then
special
we'll-
meeting, we're not allowed to amend the agenda, so we're not gonna
I
be able
wanted
to
to
do that.
thank you for your effort.
Thank you,
Thank
Tom.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Sure, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, everybody.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.